Okay, this is part 2 of Chapter 4 lecture and discussion. What we're going to focus on now is something that will stay with the Indian culture throughout history as we study it. We're going to continually come back to India. We're going to continually come back to China, and for a while Egypt, and for a while the Middle East. But India and China, they stay with us till the end. The caste system, maybe you've heard of it, is incredibly important to the Indian society, what becomes the Indian society. The Aryans were the ones that brought the caste system in. Basically, it was a very, very rigid social structure. And often this was based on the color of your skin. The lighter color skin you have, you tended to be more towards the top of the social hierarchy. Darker colored skin, more towards the bottom. But these were very clearly defined social places. And over time, as these two mixed, and they intermingle and intermix, the color called Varna, is eliminated because the intermingling means that everyone basically becomes the same color. But by then the social classes are very well established, and when people move into these areas, this will allow them to naturally fit into one of the 4 main social classes. But over time, as the Aryans and Dravidians, these Indian peoples, become more and more complex, 4 classes just won't cut it. And so there would be a lot of subcastes called jati. There's almost 2,000 subcastes in Indian culture, jati. We think of the caste system as being pretty inflexible. You were born into your caste for a reason. We'll talk about that a little bit later with religion. But it wasn't. You could move up through the class system if you're a rare individual. But for the most part, if you were born poor, you were going to stay poor. If you were born middle class, you were going to stay middle class. So on and so forth. The Aryans, much like the Egyptians and Mesopotamians, founded a patriarchal society, meaning it was male-dominated. They traced their lineage through the male side. Males were the ones who held public office. Women had influence, but it was limited to the home, private, if you will, rather than public positions. Now, there is a very real and very important blending of Aryan and Dravidian beliefs as pertains to religion. This will become, these beliefs combined will become known as something we call Hinduism. Hinduism is one of the 4 major world religions still practiced today. It is the oldest by far. It's much older than Christianity, it's even older than Judaism, and very, very much older than Islam, which is the newest of the 4 major religions. The central belief behind Hinduism is this idea of reincarnation. These peoples tended to believe that when you died, that was not the end, but rather than necessarily going on to an afterlife like you're probably familiar with, you would be reborn into another soul. Oftentimes this was animals, and eventually, and that was kind of the lower end, if you were born into animals. But eventually, if you were born as a poor person, you're in the poor class, well then you did something wrong in your former life, and so you're having to work your way back up the ladder. If you are rich, well, you deserve to be rich because you obviously did some good things in your former lives, and you're working your way up the ladder towards moksha, which is, this understanding. The main thing that Hindus want to do, they want to break the cycle of reincarnation. They want to stop being reborn. They want to become one with the universe, Brahman, as they call the universe. And that is the overall overreaching goal, become one with the universe. Hinduism is polytheistic. They worship many gods, although they tend to break them down to 3 or 4 more important gods than others, but we won't go into that kind of detail here in this discussion. Main thing is, remember, reincarnation is central, and it's used as a justification for someone's place in society. Okay, I want to end this with our connections, big picture stuff, to bring it all back together. The 2 major cities in the Harappan society, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa itself, are very influential for a number of reasons. They were the bigger, more populous cities. They were destroyed because of natural disasters, so remember that. The Aryan migration changed Indian history forever. The Indians had a tremendous impact. They brought their idea of social classes into the Indian culture, which created, of course, the caste system. They were able to trade over huge distances. The Indians traded with Mesopotamians and everybody in between, Indo-Europeans in between. There was the huge development of the Hindu religion, which is very important. It is the longest lasting religion, over 2,000 years old, very ancient religion. Don't forget about the Vedas and how they talked about the Vedas were a description of the Aryan struggles back in the day when they didn't have reading or writing. They wanted to pass on to their children, this is where we come from, this is who we had to fight to get there, don't forget this is your legacy. And then eventually later on, once they did gain the ability to read and write, they tried to decipher the Vedic poems and songs that were now written down, and this became something called the Upanishads. So, very, very important culture, the Indians were, and they will become very powerful, and yet again in world history, in current day they are a fairly powerful country. Okay, thanks.